Greetings and welcome to Great Growth Hacking Secrets. I'm your host, Muhammad Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co author of New Success Secrets available on Amazon. On this episode, we have a special guest, Lena Livinsky. Lena is the host of Accented World podcast. Please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Lena Livinsky. Lena, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. Lena, before we get started, I just want to let you know I really appreciate the time. And many millions of immigrants, including myself, need your help how to modify their accent to communicate properly and clearly so everyone can effectively understand that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm very happy to help anybody who needs my help, and I'm happy to talk about it because I think it's important to talk about it.
Yes, wonderful. So, Lena, let me get started with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to start this podcast, Accented World?
So I wanted to start a podcast for a while, but I couldn't think of the idea that I wanted to actually talk about. There were so many things that I was interested in. And when I started to look within and I thought about, instead of sharing what I'm interested about, I wanted to share more about my story, my expertise, things that I do and things that that are near and dear to my heart. So that's how the story started, because I'm an immigrant myself. This is where I got the idea. I wanted to inspire other immigrants to think outside of the box, to look for careers and things to do in life that are not your typical things that you would do when you go to school. Things like entrepreneurship, and talk to people who are successful, to inspire them to dream big and do things that are not necessarily standard and traditional. So that's really where the idea started. I wanted to have meaningful conversations with other immigrants, and share, and also spread the word about immigration and show it from a different light, from a positive positive light and perspective as it is.
Mm-hmm. That's a great integration into American world.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you're not only you have done it yourself, you are helping others to achieve the same. Basically, that's the key part. So, from your experience of working with other immigrants, I'm sure there's so many mistakes we have learned what people do in modifying their accent to effectively communicate, and there's so many success secrets they achieved it to adapt that accent. So, based on that, I'd like to ask a few questions if you don't mind.
Of
My
course.
question is, what are the top three missteps to avoid when it comes to modifying your accent to adapt American way?
So I think the most important thing to keep in mind is having this goal to speak like a native speaker, because unless you're a child when you move here, like, it's really hard to adapt that kind of speech. And people have this idea of perfection. If you're a native speaker, then you speak perfect. And that's not true. Even native speakers make mistakes.
Right.
Nobody is a perfect speaker. There is no such thing as a perfect accent, because you have Australian accent and British and American. And in the United States itself, you have people from Michigan and New York and Georgia, and everybody speaks with a different accent. So there is no such thing as a perfect accent. So people get this idea that you need to speak like the perfect American accent, which, what is it? I don't know what it is. And people make mistakes all the time. You speak to native speakers and people, they make mistakes. They make grammatical mistakes sometimes. They'll stumble over their words. They use a lot of pauses and fillers, and they're not very fluent sometimes. So I think this idea of perfection is the first mistake that people make. I think the goal of accent modification should never be modify my accent, get rid of my accent. I think it should be become a great communicator. I think that's the first step that you need to think about. And it's really the most important step, because if you're not setting yourself up for success, what are you really doing with accent modification? So I think that's really important to think about. Some other things to think about is it's not only about pronunciation, because people focus on pronouncing everything perfectly. It's not about that only. It's about integrating the language piece as well, the cultural language. It's about integrating the rhythm of English and prosody of English, which is really important to keep in mind, because if your rhythm is off, then you're going to have some communication breakdowns. It's actually what's interesting to think about is that if you use the correct prosody, if you use the correct rhythm and intonation, you might still get your message across better, if rather than even if you have pronunciation mistakes. Like, you might still be very well understood. That's how important it is. And it's usually not taught in the ESL classes. Usually everything is about pronunciation. And that's not the only thing that you need to think about. There's so much more to it. And then the third misstep, or that you really need to pay attention to, is not listening to English. Like, people like to just start learning from textbooks, and they start to learn from advice from their teachers. And it's not the first thing you need to do. First, you need to listen and understand and do your auditory training, which is often omitted. So I would say those are the 3 missteps that people have when it comes to accent modification.
Wow, Lena, you gave me some hope. I will get there someday.
You sound great, but you're a great communicator already. So I think you're already there. You can just get better and better, but you're already great. So.
Okay, great. So I'm sure, as you have been working with so many, students, helping them to improve their communication. So I would like to share one story, which was your single most professional failure was, where you could not help someone. And what did you learn, and how did you recover from that? Because that really took a toll on, people. When we fail on something, that really emotionally, professionally, we do take a toll on that.
Definitely. Where I think, let me think, that's a really good question. Usually, I think when it comes to accent modification, it comes to that mindset change, right? Instead of like going for that perfection. So for people who don't make that mindset change, that's a lot of the times, they're going for this goal that is really hard to reach. So they might stop some way along the middle, right? Because accent modification, it's the mindset change, and there's also a lot of practice that goes into it, because essentially what you're doing is you're retraining your muscles, and you're building new connections within your brain, where it's learning to move your muscles differently, to use your voice differently. There's so many steps that goes into it, and you've been speaking a certain way for most of your life. However, whenever you started to learn English, or whenever you started this accent modification journey, it's when you're after 20 years old or so. So that's a long time to speak a certain way. So that's usually the biggest failure. If somebody doesn't understand that it takes time, or if somebody doesn't make that mindset change to focus more on being a good communicator rather than being this perfect speaker, that's the story of failure, when somebody would stop and maybe not achieve their goal.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for, as being an immigrant and successfully doing it yourselves, what are your top 3 success secrets in adapting this accented world model?
Okay, so first things first, before you do anything, it's auditory training. So listen to English. Pay attention to the patterns of English, because once your brain kind of adapts what you're listening to, then you're able to use it, right? If you don't know what it sounds like that you're trying to do, how can you change what you're doing, right? And it doesn't mean you're going to listen to, watch a movie and you know what to do. It takes time. You need to auditory train your ear, and you have to pick out the information you're looking for. So that's the first thing we need to do before we do any type of modification, I think. And it's, even if you don't live in like an English-speaking country, you can still do it by listening to audiobooks and podcasts and watching movies and TV shows. You can still stimulate this environment. And it's really key, I think, before you do any type of accent modification. The next thing is it's putting in the consistent work, because if you do it for, let's say, 15 minutes a week, your progress is going to be a lot slower. You do want to put in at least, I would say, 15 minutes a day, which I still think it's a great amount of practice. But you want to do it daily so that you're retraining your muscles. It's essentially the same thing as if you're going to the gym, right? If you go once a week and you do it for 10 minutes, you're not going to see a lot of effects, right? It's a muscle memory thing. It's retraining your brain. So you want to do it daily for at least 15 minutes So you really see the effects and you see them much quicker. And the third thing to do is to give yourself some grace, because I feel like as immigrants, we're so hard. We're hard workers. We want to get things done. We want to get them done quickly so we can move on to the next thing. And it's not that. Give yourself grace. You're working hard. You're trying to make this happen. It's going to take time. You're retraining your brain essentially. So give yourself some grace. Give yourself time to adapt. Give yourself time to do it. I would say those are the three things you should pay attention to.
Yeah, it's like a losing weight. You took years to accumulate it, and now it won't go overnight. Hey, I went to gym for this week. Nothing happened really. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And some people think that's how it works. Like, oh, I did it, or I did this, class, and nothing happened. Like, it takes time. Just be patient. You
Yeah,
can do
that's
it.
why they have every New Year resolution that goes away within a month. So
That's the thing.
yeah,
It's the lack of consistency which people struggle with.
absolutely. We should believe in making an incremental progress every day. Incremental. I started walking like a 2 hour and a half, 90-minute walk 2 years ago, 5 days a week. And initially, for 1 month, it was very hard. And now it's like I feel like a craving that I need to go for a walk. Because it's a habit. It's a time of the day. I look at should I go for a walk? Is the weather, everything is good and everything? Because that's how my body is saying I need to go for a walk. That's the key part. You need to make it a habit.
Exactly. It takes time. And if you do it consistently for even like a week or 2 weeks, then you'll want to do it. You'll just get into the habit of it. But if you do it here and there, like usually for me, like that doesn't work. I need to create a habit.
Yeah, I have gone through that experience. It takes 2 to 3 months to really make a habit. Before that is like once you lose it, it's gone away, because we are we do not want to change. As a human.
That's true. It's very true. It's hard. It's hard to make any changes,
Yeah.
especially as you get older. I feel like it's just
Yes.
because we're so set in our ways, but it's possible. You can do it. It's just changing your mindset is key.
Mhm. How, Lena, growth hacking secrets community, people who are watching this right now and maybe watch in future, how they can support you?
So I actually have a digital course that for accent modification. So it's going to be open again in April. So this is something that people can look into if they wanted to start to work on their accent. And then my podcast, The Accented World, a new episode comes out every Friday. So if they're interested in watching, they can catch me there.
Yeah. All my immigrant friends, followers, connections, whatever you call it on social media, if you think you need to make even a 1% improvement in how you speak English so that you can communicate effectively, you owe it to yourself to check lenalivinsky.com. I did check it,
Absolutely.
and I will be your regular listener to your podcast. I am telling you right now, because I love to improve myself, where I am right now.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
And I think we should all strive for that. And thank you. And I think what you're doing is amazing too with the, success secrets, because so many people have incredible experiences. To learn from people who have gone through it, I think it's key. I think it's listening to these conversations and learning from authentic people who are showing up authentically. You can learn so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. That leads to, you probably got a clue from my next question. Leads to my question is, I like to have a quick testimonial for the show. Show name is the Growth Hacking Secret Show. And here's the question: what would you say to your best friend about Growth Hacking Secret Show when I'm not there?
That it's a must watch. You can actually learn so much from this show in terms of success, and you can get idea of what you can do in your own life, in terms of your business and in terms of your personal life. So I think it's definitely a must watch.
Yeah. Thank you for your kind words. Really appreciate it. Lena, what would you say as a final word?
I would just say that stop being so hard on yourself. You can achieve so much in this life as long as you show up authentically and you believe in yourself, and give yourself grace when you're doing it, because it's not easy. No change is never easy, but you can do it. You can achieve what you want.
Yes, you talk about change, Lena. My last word is adapt the change. Otherwise, you have no other option in your life. Look at this what happened in last 24 like one year, COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We had
Mm-hmm.
to adapt a change. So it really is when we really need want to, or we sometimes we have been pushed to adapt that change. Does not matter. Change, you have to adopt it. Otherwise, there's no survival. So for your accent modification, I want you to adapt this change. Start learning yourself. LenaLivinsky.com. Thank you. So with that, thank you so much, Lena, for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of a Growth Hacking Secrets community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.